a slave ship. So I traveled both by land and by water, through different countries till 6 or 7 months after I had been kidnapped, I arrived at the coast. The first thing I saw was a vast ocean, and a ship riding at anchor waiting for its cargo. The ocean and the ship filled me with astonishment that soon turned to fear. I was taken to the ship and carried on board. The crew had strange complexions and long hair. Their language was very different from any I had ever heard. Some of them thumped me and tossed me around to see if I was healthy. I was sure that I had got into a world of bad spirits and that they were going to kill me. I was terrified. I wished I was anyone but me. I would rather have been even the lowest slave in my own country. If I had owned 10,000 worlds, I would have given them all to change my lot for this. When I looked round the ship, I saw a furnace boiling on the deck, and many black people all chained together, every one of their faces full of sorrow. I was overpowered by horror and fainted. When I recovered, I saw some black people around me. They were some of those who had brought me on board, and they were receiving their pay. They tried to cheer me up, but in vain. I had asked them if we were not to be eaten by those white men with horrible looks, red faces, and long hair. No, they said. A white man brought me in a little liquor in a wine glass. I was afraid of him, and wouldn't take it out of his hand. A black man took it from him and gave it to me, and I swallowed a little of it. I never had had alcohol before. The strange sensation it gave me threw me into great consternation. Soon after this, the blacks who had brought me on board went off the ship and left me abandoned to despair. I had no chance now of returning to my country, and not even the smallest chance of getting back to shore. The crew took me down below decks into the ship's stinking hold. With the horribleness of the stench and my crying, I was so sick and low that I couldn't eat. I wanted to die. The two white men offered me food, but I refused to eat. Then one of them held me fast by the hands and laid me across the windlass. He tied my feet while the other flogged me. When they let me loose, I wanted to jump into the sea. Even though I couldn't swim and I was afraid of the water, I still wanted to do it. I couldn't. Nets were stretched along the sides of the ship, and they were too high for me to jump. Besides, the sailors watched us all the time if we weren't chained down to the decks. Days later, I saw some poor Africans severely whipped for trying to jump overboard, and every hour there were Africans whipped for not eating. It often happened to me. That first day, among the poor chained men in the hold, I found some people of Benin. "What are they going to do to us?" I asked. "They're taking us away to work for them," a man from Benin explained. "And do they only live here?" I asked. "In this hollow place, the ship?" "They have a white people's country," the man explained, "but it is far away." "How can it be," I asked, "that in our whole country nobody ever heard of them?" "They live very far away," another man explained. "Where are their women?" I asked. "Do they have any?" "Yes," the first man said. "And why don't we see them?" "They leave them behind." "How can the ship go?" I asked. "We don't know exactly," they said. "They put cloth on those tall poles with the help of ropes. Then the vessel goes. Besides that, they have some spell or magic they put in the water to make the ship stop when they want it to." I was exceedingly amazed at this account, and really thought the white people were spirits from another world. I really wanted to get away from them, but I felt a little less scared, knowing that they were taking us to work. If that was all they did to me, I could stand it. Despite what the men from Benin told me, I was often afraid I should be put to death. The white people looked and acted so savage. I had never seen such brutal cruelty. At times, while we were anchored off the coast, I and many others were permitted to stay on deck. One day, to my great astonishment, I saw one of the ships coming in with its sails up. As soon as the whites saw it, they gave a great shout, at which we were amazed. The vessel got larger as it got nearer, and then the anchor was let go. I and my countrymen were convinced it was done by magic. Soon after this, the other ship got her boats out, and they came on board of us. The people of both ships seemed very glad to see each other. Several of the strangers shook hands with us black people and made signs with their hands. I suppose they were trying to tell us that we were going to their country, but we did not understand them. At last our ship got in all her cargo. The crew made the ship ready, with many frightening noises. We were all put under deck so that we could not see how they managed the vessel. In the hold of the ship, many of us died, victims of the greed of our purchasers. All of us were pinned up together, crowded so close that we could hardly turn around. Our chains galled us. Open tubs were used for toilets. Often children fell into them and nearly drowned. The heat caused heavy perspiration, and the air became unfit to breathe. It sickened us. It almost suffocated us. And in this thick, fetid, pestilential air, the shrieks of women and their groans of the dying vibrated hour upon hour. Fortunately, I was soon so near death that they kept me on the deck almost all the time. And because I was so young, I wasn't chained. Nearly every day some of my companions were brought upon deck at the point of death. I hoped that I would soon die too. Often I thought the inhabitants of the deep were much happier than I. I envied the fish their freedom, and I wished I could have changed my lot for theirs. Everything I saw convinced me more of the cruelty of the whites. One day they netted a lot of fish. They killed and ate all they wanted. Those of us who were on the deck begged for some fish, but they threw the rest back into the sea. A few of my countrymen who were very hungry tried to take some fish when they thought no one was watching, but they were caught and flogged severely. And the cruelty wasn't only toward us blacks, but also toward some of the whites themselves. Once I saw a white man flogged so unmercifully with a rope that he died, and they tossed him over the side of the ship like a dead animal. During our trip, I saw flying fish, which surprised me very much. They used to fly across the ship, and many of them fell on the deck. Also, I saw the first use of the ship's quadrant. I had often seen the sailors make observations with it. One of them let me look through it. The moving clouds looked to me like land that disappeared. But how could land disappear? I was sure that I was in another world and everything around me was magic.